And out of their West Indian island comes a tale of terror and voodoo, of witchcraft and zombies.
And a farmer with the longest shotgun you've ever seen plays the villain.
This is Schlock Your Socks Off.
Oh yeah, welcome to a late night edition of Schlock Your Socks Off. I'm Mike.
That creeped me out a little bit.
I was doing my best Barry White impression. It's not really a late night edition. This just happens to be one of the few where we're recording at nighttime instead of in midday.
I see. I am Maya.
And this is Bree speaking.
Speak up a little bit. You're being so damn quiet.
Very seductive, though. Just as seductive, a little louder.
The joke went just like right over my head.
This is Bree.
There we go.
Now you just sounded scared and a little bit constipated.
Well, that would work because we did just watch Killer Klowns from Outer Space.
Not in outer space, Maya.
From
outer. I just said.
But
from.
hey, before we go any further, I'd just like to say good save because I mean this podcast was like already derailing. Nice pivot to get right back to the
point. Well, this one was back to the point. This one was picked by none other than Michael Moore, who has been watching this movie since.
The first time I saw this movie, I was probably like 8 years old. I saw it on the Sci-Fi Channel one day, and I thought it was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. As you can tell, about the past 20 years, I haven't matured much at all because I still think this movie's fucking hysterical.
It is a very funny movie, and it's actually, it depends, I guess. If you're not scared of clowns, you're not going to be scared of anything in this movie, except maybe a couple of their wails or their screams or whatever.
Even if you hate clowns, this movie really isn't that scary.
I think they had good stuff with specifically like the clowns and the way they look. It's just, you don't take it very seriously just because you know it's fake, but I think that they had some genuinely scary stuff in this movie.
Maybe I'm just so desensitized to horror that I don't think anything in this movie really is scary. Neither did I when I was a child. I think because this movie plays more on the comedy element than it does the horror.
Oh, for sure.
But I forgot the point I was going to make.
Well,
no, but it's a fantastic film. Basic premise, give you the rundown real quick, is 3 30-year-olds, 2 of whom are pretending to play, I think, recently graduated high school students, and one being a cop that's supposed to be like 10 years older than the other 2, and they're all very clearly the same age.
Yeah, very clearly the same age.
Maybe they're college graduates.
Or brothers? Were they brothers?
No.
No. The 2 guys with the ice cream truck were the brothers.
Okay, so...
the Terenzi brothers.
There was like a hefty amount of people that were trying to stop these clowns who immediately get to business at the beginning of the movie.
It starts out like any typical 80s horror movie would. You got all these teenagers up at Makeout Point trying to get their business on. And then, a big light in the sky comes crashing down nearby. So they go to investigate it. What do they find?
A circus tent.
Ooh. We should say that the crazy town drunk that lives up in the hills found it first.
Oh, yeah.
Him and his dog both dead.
Well, we didn't see the dog die, but we could only imagine.
His name was Pooh Bear, for all of you wondering.
Yeah,
They left out the Winnie, so they couldn't legally be sued by Disney.
That's a good name for a dog, though. I will give them that.
Especially a big old hound dog like him.
Yeah.
Pooh Bear.
I need me a Pooh Bear. But anyways, sidestep back. So they die or whatever, and I guess that it seems like these alien clown, whatever they are taking these people, I don't know, for experimentation, or if they're just fucking with people to fuck with people,
or if they eat them.
Yeah, they don't really go too much into it, but we see at the very beginning of the movie, they like put them in these cotton candy
cocoons. But one thing I'd like to say is that's kind of the fun of this movie, and it kind of adds a little bit to the horror element, is that you never get a clear motivation from the clowns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's like one of the dreadful things. Like, you imagine this like end of the world scenario happening, and you have absolutely no idea why it's happening. You know, like say nuclear holocaust happens. We have an explanation for that. Breakdown in politics, collapse of society, things like that. Clowns invading and killing everybody in the town.
And with this
Can't
one,
communicate with them. Fuck, that's fucking terrifying. It's like, why is this happening? Right as you're being turned into a cotton candy cocoon.
And with this one, it's like, it's already all in the title. You shouldn't be confused about what you're watching at all with this movie, because it's killer clowns from outer space. That's it. It's
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, if you're confused by this movie, then I think you need to take a reading comprehension test, because you clearly didn't understand what the title was.
And something we should mention, which we always do, is like the body count's pretty big. They're consistently killing
there's
people.
quite a few clowns,
Yeah.
and they go on a rampage through literally the entire town.
And they're all pretty good at ventriloquism and puppets and
And shadow puppets.
Yeah, and very talented, all of them, every single one of them. They should start a circus.
You get on out of here.
But, no, this movie is pretty schlocky in and of the fact that it's really gimmicky. It hits all the expected beats of a late 80s horror film. The angry cop that doesn't believe in what's going on. Your two main protagonists, the boy and the girl. You've got the rogue cop that believes him. Kind of like Greg from Scary Movie in Freddy vs. Jason.
Yeah.
He's the cop that believes them and wants to help and do good.
And I do have one thing. It's like one gripe, and it's hardly even a gripe, but nobody believed them when they're like, "There's killer clowns out there," and everyone's like, "You're fucking with me." And I personally feel like if that were happening today, they'd be like, "Holy shit, let's get the fuck out there."
That did happen last year. Remember all those reports of like, oh, people are seeing spooky clowns on the sides of roads and they're holding knives and shit like that. It was happening all across the U.S. It spread over into Europe and shit.
It's just
It was
weird.
a huge thing for a couple of months, like October of 2016. We just don't know if these clowns were from space.
Well, sequel?
Question mark? The end? Question mark?
I actually, briefly, I was looking at the Wikipedia, and there is a sequel in development hell.
Dude, I was reading that same thing, and apparently that movie's been in development hell since 1988 when the original one came out. So I don't think we're ever gonna get it.
Well, it wasn't a huge hit by any means. It didn't have that big of a budget or anything, but I could see why it has a following, because clowns, scary killer clowns,
you either
kick
love
ass.
them or you hate them. And I gotta say, for me personally, this and Stephen King's It are the two most influential reasons why I fucking love clowns. I love clowns for the fact that they terrify a good portion of the population, whereas I think they're just silly and goofy, and it's like watching the Three Stooges, only this is like the proto version of the Three Stooges, because circus clowns have been a thing longer than television or anything like that. And I love clowns for the fact that I meet so many people that are scared of them, and just watching them, you say clown and they just shudder, and you're like, you're scared of some drunken white grease paint. That's funny.
Well, they're just weird, and they're too happy. They're too fucking happy.
Oh,
Fuck
yeah.
them. Fuck them.
I'm usually that happy.
Fuck you.
Fuck you too, buddy.
Can't we all just get along?
No, that doesn't make for interesting podcasts.
Well, I am definitely in that percentile that actually loves clowns, especially creepy clowns. So this was actually like the one schlock movie that I actually kind of looked forward to. So, and
You didn't really have a chance to look forward to it. I told you what we were watching like 10 minutes before we started.
well, in those 10 minutes, I looked forward to it.
I guess not. I guess I did tell you
Those
earlier.
10 minutes felt like 20 minutes. 30 maybe.
The longest 10 minutes of my life. But I do like the I don't want to say scary, but it definitely creeped me out because the humans couldn't communicate with them because I guess they were aliens, but they were silent most of the time, and all they did was laugh and chuckle.
And their laughs were honestly kind of creepy too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, what was it, makeup, like masks that they put on the actors, or what was that?
I would say the closest thing I
The
can
mouths are really big, so
the closest thing I can compare the clown heads to would be the animatronic heads of the Ninja Turtles from the live action movies.
That's what I was
That's
thinking,
what I think
yeah.
it is. So that means, you've got one guy in that suit doing the performance and then like 3 guys off to the side with a fucking 1988 like remote control, like make the mouth move, make the eyes blink.
with this one it would be easier because, as you said, the clowns don't speak that much. The turtles have a lot of dialogue,
But they have a surprising amount of facial expressions.
oh yeah,
in it.
and whenever they used focused in on their mouths and stuff, I think those were the parts that creeped me out the most.
Oh, yeah, 'cause
they were like really close up on them, and it looked awfully just fucking fucked.
A little disturbing.
Like their mouths are really big. They smiled all the time.
And
then-
90% of the clowns are like a good foot and a half taller than the rest of the people in it. So, to trying to hammer home the point that these things were from another planet, they're like closer to 7-8 feet tall. So that should be disturbing in and of itself.
But no, you can go. You go. I've said plenty.
You go.
All right, come on now. Somebody say something.
Well, I was just gonna say I appreciated the fact that the specific kill that Brianna mentioned earlier with the shadow puppet. I appreciated everything about it. He was basically just doing shadow puppets, and there was this big group of people, some elderly people, some younger people, whatever, just hanging out on a bench, like a bus stop bench. And they were watching these shadow puppets and being so interested, and it was funny and stuff because they showed like George Washington sailing in and a woman's body and stuff. He's really good at it. But my one thing is, again, how people didn't believe them that the clowns were there. These people didn't even acknowledge the big ass, scary ass clown that's doing it, and they were just so infatuated with the shadow puppet.
Well, yeah, the shadow puppet was pretty damn terrific. He did George Washington crossing the Delaware River. Yeah. That's impressive.
It is impressive.
I will say, this movie deserves props because I looked it up, and this movie was made on a budget. Apologies, a budget.
200 digits.
This film was made on a budget of $1.8 million, and it looks fantastic. Everything from the way the clown looks, the practical effects when they're killing people,
The costumes.
the weird like clown snakes that evolved from the moving popcorn to the Dr. Seuss inspired vacuum machine they have. It all just looks really great. Honestly, the performances from our trio of stars and majority of the supporting characters are pretty terrible.
I didn't give a shit ass about any of them personally.
This movie literally looks like they're like, we're not too worried about the actors. The entirety of the budget's going to the effects of this film, and I think it pays off really well because it all just looks great for being $1.8 million. That's so cheap.
Yeah, and in 1988, I think that for what it is, it's fabulous. I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means. Like if you're looking for just a great film, I don't think that this is that.
Oh, this is not a masterclass, or I wouldn't even call this a work of art because the camera work is very basic.
It's funny, but it's not like
it's a by the numbers plot.
Yeah.
I would describe the humor as like almost like a David Zucker film, but not as fast paced with the jokes. But it definitely has a very Mel Brooks, David Zucker, like old Jewish comedian feel to it. Especially like the highlight of that kind of humor comes from a scene where we get the most stereotypical scene in the whole film, which is this tiny little car pulls up to an amusement park with the security guard walking around outside, and like 6 clowns pull out of this tiny little car that could barely fit 2 normal-sized people.
And one of them was a midget clown, which I don't think we saw throughout most of the film.
Yeah, you only see like 2 or 3 of them really throughout the entire film. But as they're getting out, there's a shot showing all 6 of them standing in front of the car, and they're all holding pies, and it cuts back to the security guard and just very deadpan says, "What are you gonna do with those pies, boys?" And then boom, pied to death. He gets hit with almost 100 pies in about 15 seconds. And it's that kind of humor that makes this movie so fucking awesome. Because especially up to that point, the deaths had been fairly gruesome. I mean, you got a lot of cotton candy cocoons, the weird popcorn evolving monsters, things of that nature. And this guy, you're like, that pie is going to have some adverse effect, and literally his whole death is just him getting pied and falling over. It's not until later that you find out that those pies were made of acid or something because they melted him down to just a skeleton.
That is a fucking great kill. Most of their... See, I think that they did a great job. The kills were creative as shit. What was your favorite kill, Brianna?
I love this question. No, you go first.
Well, I already said a little bit about it, but it's the one where he was doing the shadow puppets on the wall, and he's just going through all the things, and everyone is super entertained, and then he does a hand dragon or a hand beast of some kind.
It's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something.
And it just engulfs all of them, and there's like 6 people there, so it's 6 people at once that he just basically has his shadow puppet eat, and I just thought that was pretty creative and awesome.
And I really like that one specifically for the fact that because it's 1988, it definitely doesn't look like it's CG. It looks like it's traditional animation into that scene.
Yeah. And there isn't a lot. I don't think there was like any blood in this movie. There was, except for when.
I know. Sorry.
Okay, no, yeah, you could go. There wasn't a lot of blood.
Go right ahead.
My favorite kill scene was that asshole cop Mooney, which if you watch the movie, which I hope you will, So the tall clown, long story short, the good cop, Dave, I think that's what his name was. So he goes into the police station looking for asshole Mooney, and he sees Mooney at his desk, and he's like moving his mouth, and he's quote unquote talking, and there's blood down his chin, and it turns out that the clown has his hand like up his head or his spine or something.
Yeah, it's like through the back.
Yeah, kind of like a puppet, like a ventriloquist, and I thought that was superb.
It looked really good because with the blood, like she said, coming out of his mouth, it was at each end of his mouth going down, like so it looked like your classic puppet.
Your ventriloquist doll with the jaw that moves to make it look like he's talking.
That was a great kill.
And I really like that scene for the fact because I can't remember that actor's name specifically, but he is one of those guys that could be in, like, I Know That Voice or that guy from That One Thing, those kind of documentaries about working actors who are in a ton of shit. Because I've seen him in a bunch of stuff from, like, the 70s and 80s. And during that ventriloquist scene, they cut to this really tight shot of him as the dummy, and it just gets tighter because the camera, it's either zooming in or pushing in on a dolly. I couldn't tell. And it gets super dramatic for a second. He's like, "Don't worry. We just want to kill you." And then it cuts back to a wide shot, and the clown pulls his hand out of the back and just throws the body to the floor. And I remember that being one of the scenes as a kid where I was just like, I got chills down my spine. I was like, oh, that was fucking awesome. I need to watch this movie forever.
Did you have a favorite kill, Mike?
Yeah, I talked about it earlier.
It was the pie?
Yes, that was my favorite death in the whole movie because I think that's just like the height of that old school kind of vaudevillian style comedy.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And at the very end of the movie, we end up seeing, like, I'm pretty sure we saw more than a dozen clowns. There was a shitload of clowns that they had to, like, they had to make all those. They had to get all those people together. That was probably, that costume designer or whoever was in charge, I'd imagine it was a whole team, really had his work cut out for him because he had a lot of shit to make. And I think he did a really damn good job. Especially on, like, the prosthetics. Is that how you pronounce that?
And I would say one of the things we need to mention, since it's been a topic of discussion over the past couple episodes, is the soundtrack to this film. In true 80s horror film fashion, this movie has an 80s hair metal Clown-esque theme song that is so cheesy but so awesome. The main guitar riff in the song is the but it's played in like an Ozzy Osbourne, like really high-pitched heavy metal from the mid to late 80s guitar. And it's so awesome, and it's a song about killer clowns from space. It's a terrible song, honestly, but it fits the movie so perfectly.
It's probably a terrible movie too, but it is so much fun to watch. I've never seen it before. I've seen it on Netflix, just like I've always passed it, or on any of these streaming sites. I've always just went right past it because I had no idea if I'd actually care. But I care. Pass.
I care too. And I will keep watching this movie until the day I die. I will be buried with a VHS copy of it, a DVD copy, and a Blu-ray copy. Because I'm weird like that.
I would like to compare it to something. I don't know if we'll ever do this movie on this podcast, but it's called Drive Thru. It's like a horror movie at a fast food restaurant, and that has a killer clown in it, but he's played off more kind of like a Power Ranger. This one they make him like slower and just scarier. That one it was a little more ridiculous. Maybe we will talk about that one eventually.
I've been trying to think of the name of that movie
Drive Thru
all damn day.
I've been thinking about that movie since you mentioned Killer Clowns. I should have just said something, people.
Well, there's this one scene that I'd like to just mention because, like Mike said, like there's no clear, not even a hazy hint of like the motivation of these clowns.
Yeah, they're just fucking doing this shit.
And like that's kind of the scariest reason, like kind of like the Joker, like he just wants to. There's no clear motivation. He just does it. But there was one scene where there's this big one of the bigger clowns. They're in the circus spaceship, and it's the chamber of like the cocoons. And he has like this this big crazy straw, and it's hooked up to one of the cocoons, and he's like sucking on it, like drinking it, like a smoothie or something.
Are they
So
drinking them?
Yeah, they drink the blood. I think those cocoons maybe like liquefy the corpses, because a couple times when you see them like rip into the cocoons and see a body inside, like their skin's gone.
Yeah.
So I think those cocoons like liquefy the bodies, and the clowns are just like.
So basically, those cotton candy cocoons are like blenders, human blenders.
Maybe it probably makes the bodies pretty sweet. Like maybe that's why they put them in there.
I bet all those clowns have diabetes.
That's why they're doing it.
You're gonna look at their teeth, and it's like, oh, we get it now.
My blood sugar's low. I gotta drink another human.
I think we covered pretty much everything, except I don't want to spoil the ending with what happens, because I feel like whoever's watching this should just see it. But
this is another one that I'm going to 100% recommend. Check it out for yourself. You need to see this movie at least once in your life before you die.
Agreed.
I agree as well.
Wow. All three of us agree on a movie for once. I think the Armageddon's coming, guys.
Well,
you were making a point before we cut you off.
Well, it's gone now.
Well, I apologize for that, folks. But yes, I think I'm going to agree with Maya and say that we've talked enough for one day. So thanks for listening to us for 10 fucking weeks straight. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Goodbye.